welcome viewers and thanks so much for staying with us here on India Today. I'm Chaiti Narula and welcome to Let's Connect via Cisco Webex. Today we're going to be discussing the future of work in the digital economy, and joining me today is an esteemed panel. The new normal is here. There are shrinking workspaces. Everything seems to be going digital. So what is the future of work in the middle of all of this that we're witnessing, these unprecedented times? The esteemed panelists that I'm talking about, we've got Daisy Chitlapelli, who's joining us. She's the Managing Director, Digital Transformation Office, DTO, Cisco India and SAARC. Daisy drives Cisco's digital transformation agenda, aligning Cisco's offerings and ecosystems to emerging opportunities in digital, and leads the charge in digitally enabling organizations across sectors, across industries in India. Daisy has over 22 years of experience.
Pleasure being here, Chaiti.
Next up, we've got Sabvir Singh, CEO of Policy Bazaar. Sabvir has over 20 years of global experience in corporate leadership roles, venture capital, public markets, investing as well. Currently, he's working with a super talented team at Policy Bazaar on a mission to help India's middle class protect themselves from death, from disease, from disability. I welcome you, Mr. Singh, for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time out.
Thank you. Nice to be on the show.
Up next, we've got Vasant Rao, the Managing Director of IDC India, with 23 years of experience. Vasant is a management professional with a proven track record of building profitable businesses. He's passionate about ideas and incubating them as well, applying analytics to businesses and delivering value to customers and employees. Vasant, a very warm welcome on this broadcast today. So let's begin with Vasant then. Vasant, we are all adapting ourselves to the new normal, where work from home has become the norm and everything seems to be going digital. What is the impact that you foresee that this is going to have on the overall economy in India? And if you could just spot out some new trends or behavioral patterns that you've been observing, the rules perhaps that are emerging within this new normal of this economy.
In terms of the evolution of the new economy, I think it's important to note that whilst what started as a short-term response to the crisis is actually now ending up to be a more permanent and a more fundamental shift in the way we are conducting business, at least in the more organized and the formal sector of the economy. Barring a few industries, for most others, what we are seeing is almost an irreversible shift to digital now. And unlike in a lot of other recessions, in this one, we believe technology will be the fulcrum on which an economic recovery will be based. Even as per IDC's own response to recovery framework that we see, right, we are observing a lot of companies are now leveraging technology to actually flatten the recessionary curve. So to your question on the economy itself, in my view, some parts of the economy will actually get fitter because you're going to use technology to actually reduce the cost to create or the cost to serve, as the case may be. Addressing your second question on new trends and behaviors, yes. I think we are seeing a significant shift, and we believe that all three components of the work environment, whether it is the workspace, the work culture, or the workforce itself, they are all going to be reconfigured. As an example, in terms of the workspace, you have now work from anywhere, which is gaining momentum. And if you notice, a lot of the tech-enabled work can actually now be delivered out of smaller cities, towns, and even villages. More interesting challenges such as how are you going to drive innovation or even team engagement in a remote work environment? Now, that's going to be very difficult. So you need to drive a lot more empathy and a lot more sincerity in the way you deal with your employees. And lastly, of course, is the workforce itself. They'll have to be a lot more adaptable. Organizations will value more multiple skills. And we see that, I personally believe that there is going to be a further rise in the gig economy.
What does this mean for new businesses? How are they adapting to this particular new normal, the new methodology in which people are working today? And if you could cite some examples as to how businesses are adapting as well.
So, Chaiti, I think the word phygital, right, which is a combination of the physical world and the digital world, has been gaining popularity for some time now. And what the pandemic has done is really crash these two worlds together at a speed that we had not seen before. And for businesses, it is an opportunity for innovation to rethink, how the businesses, people will work in the businesses, but also rethink their products and services, rethink their business models, even rethink their customer demographics. And it's good that business leaders are not showing too much of an inclination to cling to the familiar and are taking bold steps to lead their people and their businesses through the shift. I think the work from home conversation is equally valid. And if you look at Cisco ourselves, and to add to what Vasant said in terms of flattening of the economy, right? You might think that Cisco is a global multinational based in Bangalore, so all of our people are here. But for the last 3 months, almost 12,000 of our people are operating from 108 cities in the country, in India, right? Whether it is a technology savvy company like TCS or a much more traditional industry like an FMCG major like Marico, they have both put out percentages of people who will continue to work from home in the next 3, 4, 5 years after we put COVID behind us. And the reason they're saying that is for all of the goodness that Vasant mentioned, right? You have an access to a workforce which is from anywhere. You probably have the ability to bring in people not just from within the country, but from outside the country. You have the ability to bring in a more diverse workforce. As an example, women who typically have shown a preference to work within 5 kilometers of home radius, right? Gig workers who could come and do a project and exit, specific skills, employable for a short period of time. If you look at a lot of the labor laws that the government is talking about is also to encourage the gig economy. I think the biggest one that we're not talking about is at this point in the near term, it is also about operational costs, right? So a lot of the innovation and value creation will also be a path not just to differentiate businesses from each other, from your closest competitor, but will also be a way for you to manage your short-term operation or even long-term operational costs. As an example, if I was to take Cisco's own work-from-home policy and what it has done for us, so we have actually shut down in the last 5 years 239 buildings worldwide, and that has led to savings in almost $500 million across both real estate rental costs as well as operating costs.
Yeah, Mr. Singh, yours is primarily an online business. How have you maneuvered through this crisis? What is the kind of impact has it had on your own organization and your business as well? And what is the kind of tips that you have, the advice that you have for young entrepreneurs who are entering the digital space with their startups now?
We are a digital platform, so there wasn't necessarily an element of transition on that front. But we have a very large tele-sales team of over 10,000 people. So they had to, move from working in fairly disciplined, over 13, 14 buildings to working from home. And I think what is remarkable about the whole thing is that, when we were forced to make the transition, we had literally a week to do it. We made the transition and it was in March, which is, the biggest season from an insurance perspective. Literally, we did, our business didn't skip a beat, and we started. I think it was first day was Saturday, and Saturday was 20% above Friday. The second point that what we have seen, and now suddenly over half is not even living in Delhi or in NCR, and they're all in different parts of India. And what is remarkable is that for them they've actually saved costs, right? They're living with their families in lower cost locations. And yet the earnings opportunity for them remains exactly what it was, before that. Suddenly, because people are looking for much more health and term insurance, April, May, June have been much better than what they would have been otherwise, on a seasonal basis, because normally the first quarter is a slow season for insurance. So because we are a digital platform, people want to buy insurance, they are coming to us, creating this, very remarkable earnings opportunity for all our sales agents. And of course, from a consumer perspective, giving them insurance. We are also faced with the same kind of decisions around how many buildings we should have in the future. What kind of workforce can we have? Because again, I think one of the speakers spoke about how women, are forced to sometimes leave jobs because either, they start a family or, they get married and move to a different location. Insurance is a business where empathy is important, right? You need to understand the consumer, you need to help them, and they need to have a bit of a relationship with you. And we find that many times, older people, older women especially, are very good at it, but we used to lose them in the past because of the factors that I mentioned. So suddenly now we have this, remarkable opportunity, in my opinion, to reshape the way we do business. We are going to south of India. We've been planning that for a long time. And earlier it was always about how much it would cost us, the capital expenditure, etc., to set up an office, everything. Now, all of that goes out of the window. The main thing is to sort out what is, absolutely critical for you and what is good to do. And I'll give you an example. I think sometimes many companies, when they enter, they spend too much time and effort in, working on their websites and how it looks and how good it is or not good it is. Actually, the thing to focus on is really the consumer experience, right? As to what is that the consumer wants, how is it being, given to them, whether they have the choices, whether they have the options. And, you can all...
Welcome back. You're watching a very special show that discusses the future of work in the digital economy. Daisy, and you are somebody who has spearheaded the operations to help a lot of companies go remote as well. What were the kind of impediments and challenges that these companies face, and how did you help them deal with it as well?
With the business continuity plans that were in place for everyone, including the largest enterprises, they were never built for a situation when the entire world shut down. So it was built for when maybe a city, a site went down, right? Irrespective of the industry they were in. So BCP plans were really called into question. The standard operating procedures of many companies itself did not prepare for the pandemic. Then there was the infrastructure problem, whether that was network connectivity, whether that was the access that employees had to collaboration tools, to laptops, to we've had many companies in India which had a very hierarchical way of deciding technology access to their employees. It was a traditional workforce built to come to office, expected to work out of a certain physical environment. So clearly infrastructure challenges, and much like the virus, there was a hidden problem as well, and that hidden problem was about cybersecurity, because when you move your place of work to home, the attackers also start leaving your offices and moving with you to the home, right? So all of this connectivity and this collaboration extension of the enterprise has to be done in a very remote, and remote connection has to be done in a very secure manner. And I think we were able to look at all three spaces. In the first month, we moved 600 large enterprises and their employees to work from home. So we had to work through this for each of them, right? This blueprint through each of them. Then there were industry regulations, and this one is quite famous, the way the IT industry had to overnight ask the ministry for a change in regulations that allowed people to work from home. And the last one, perhaps equally important, is the culture and mindset element within the organization itself. You're asking us to move to an outcome-based output measurement model. It's a productivity thing. So questions around how much supervision is good enough, how do we supervise, the trust element, the organizational element, democratic access to technology, to applications that they have in the enterprise being available at home.
Vasant, I'm going to come to you. Now, let's look at the 21st century and the way it has evolved. When you had the early 2000s, we saw .com. IT and ITES was predominant as a culture, as the sunrise sector. Then came 2010s, where we saw this whole new wave of entrepreneurs and startups. 2020s was interestingly going to be about SMEs and MSMEs as well, but nobody really expected this pandemic to really cause so much of an overhaul in our lives as well. How do you see companies now navigate through this particular pandemic, through this particular crisis as well? How do they thrive? There's some sort of an existential crisis that some fair amount of SMEs are going through at the moment.
Unfortunately, the SME and the MSME segment is the most vulnerable. They have been for some time, but with the COVID and the pandemic, that has come out and been amplified a lot more. And that's because a majority of our MSMEs are actually not technologically savvy. And they've been at very early stages of digitalization. The urgent need is, of course, to cut costs and optimize finances, and that's right, you need to do it. But if you only cut costs and hunker down and say that I'm just going to wait till the storm passes me by, that might just be the wrong strategy. In my view, companies that ran a professional setup earlier, and they had a distinction between promoter money and company money, for example, and the financial reserves in the company, they are more likely to make these technology investments now which will actually make sure that they not only survive, but also.
Daisy, I'm coming back to the point you were making earlier on how every crisis presents an opportunity as far as SMEs and MSMEs are concerned. Do you foresee any kind of opportunities coming out for them, and how can technology really help these companies leverage these opportunities as well? And most of these companies, the smaller ones, as far as their IT is concerned, it's usually a one-man show or 2 or 3 people who are managing the IT as well. How can a technology company really help them achieve this kind of a paradigm shift to be able to adopt to the new technology that is coming in, which is the future of work now?
Technology adoption has stayed low. And I think there are three reasons I would say for that, right? The first thing SMEs ask themselves always when they face, and this is true for Cisco as well, right? When they look at Cisco, they wonder whether the technology is for them or is it big, is it only for big enterprise, right? The second problem that tends to happen is that it must be easy to consume. So it has to be bite-sized from an affordability point of view. The business model has to be amenable to make it easy and affordable for them to consume is one. But it also, to the point you made about them not having very high number of skilled people internally, it must also be easy to use, right? So anything that is cloud delivered and managed centrally, where that headache of managing that IT equipment or technology or software is not on them is something that they would love. So, if I was to give you an example, at Cisco, what we did at the start of the crisis, because we also realized, and this was also a conversation with multiple SME forums in the country, that they would like now to accelerate tech adoption in a bid to reopen and survive and thrive. So, Webex is a platform which we had always used internal to Cisco, and many large enterprises have used in the country. We did a trial version for it as of mid-March, and not just Webex, but anything else that could have helped an SME to connect, to stay secure, and to collaborate, right? So we put easy bundles together on a trial basis for 90 days. In fact, those trials are just coming to an end. So that was predominantly to answer this question about, is this tech for me? So, try and buy kind of models. Of course, we did the bundling of it so that, all the pieces that would work together were put together and presented to them in a package instead of giving it to them as pieces and saying, you go figure it out. This was cloud delivered, so they really didn't have to do much in terms of, having to install and maintain and look for IT people, etc. And for a month now, we have also run an online portal, which is very easy to use. Swipe your credit card and use, much like any other online shopping forum. For Webex is an example that we've done. And I'm so happy to see that out of the orders that we've clocked on that platform in the first month, 55% of it has come from small and medium businesses in the country, from over 170 cities, right? So look at and from the most remotest of Indian cities and towns, and another 20% of orders. So, almost 75% of the orders on that platform in the first month has come from small and medium businesses and from individuals. 20% has come from individuals. So it's very encouraging and speaks to the fact that given the right model, they will adopt.
Right. Mr. Singh, at this point of time, SMEs and MSMEs are facing a crisis when it comes to liquidity, when it comes to credit flow as well, when it comes to everyday cash flow as well. When money is such a scarce asset at the moment, what is your advice to these small and medium-sized businesses on how to prioritize investments so that they can leverage the power of technology better going forward?
Yeah, so I think, in any prioritization, you always start with what are your strengths, right? And I think some of the speakers have said before that what SMEs and MSMEs do is that they have an advantage right now that they typically tend to have good, local relationships, as in they know their vendors, their suppliers, their customers relatively well. And in an environment where, large brands can't necessarily, do that, or, since everybody is working from home, everybody is equal. And I think what these companies should prioritize is find ways to enhance that advantage and invest in whichever technology if required, or, any other process which allows them to build on those relationships and get business from those people. So I think what a small person has, the advantage that they have is that they are nimble. They can, switch process system at any point in time. And I would, urge them to prioritize those kind of investments, which will directly lead to business, where, if they spend a rupee, they can get, let's say 1 or 2 rupees back in cash. And that can, keep the wheels flowing.
Absolutely. Let's get in closing comments from all our panelists now.
The number one priority has to be to invest in technology and to invest in digital. From a leadership perspective, one can't do all this transformation alone. You actually need a leader who can change the company's culture, understand and take people along, understand people and their considerations and their aspirations. You also need a leader who can actually get people to understand what is expected of them and get them aligned to the larger vision.
The number one thing is to look at it as an opportunity for innovation, value creation, rather than as just a disaster to get through. And as an opportunity to take bold steps that, of course, matter to you and which will get you on top at the other end of the crisis. That's the first call out. Definitely the time to over-communicate, whether that is with employees, whether that's with partners, suppliers, or it is with end customers. And of course, Webex can help you do that. And I think the last one perhaps is there's a lot of digital goodness that every size and kind of business has learned during these 3-4 months, right? Not to let go of that, but to keep it and to build on it, because the low-touch economy is here to stay and thrive.
Also allow you to question, a lot of old, principles as they were. So many things we take for granted, which suddenly when you can't do those things, you realize whether they were required or not required. Business travel is one of them, right? Did we really need to travel as much as we all did? Maybe, maybe not. So I think this is a great time to question everything, look at everything from first principles. And finally, I can't, not repeat the fact that I think leadership is going to change. I think you cannot, the stick has to give way, more and more to the carrot and to empathy. And we all have to make sure, that we think of employees not just as employees, but also as humans, and, look at them in totality and address their requirements. And not just, think of their business outcome.
Who thought until 2019 it's a virus that is going to teach us all of this, Thank you so much. With that, it's a wrap. I thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us on this very insightful discussion, the future of work in the digital economy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for your time.